The card appeared in the same trouser pocket for 6 consecutive weeks. Small, white, hotel stationery. The handwriting was careful, not elegant, not hurried. The handwriting of a person who had thought about the words before picking up the pen. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I don't know how to say it out loud." Ruth Eze found the first card on the Tuesday. Washing Cycle 4, Room 812's laundry. A single set of clothes delivered every 3 days, which she had already noted as unusual. Hotel guests who stayed longer than 5 days expanded their laundry. This guest didn't. Same khaki trousers, same white shirt, same dark socks. The wardrobe of a man who had brought one change of clothes to a hotel and was living in it like a uniform. She worked in the laundry department of the Grand View Hotel, Abuja, a 140-room mid-tier business hotel where everything was beige and adequate and calibrated to satisfy without delighting. She had worked there for 3 years. She was 22. She processed between 40 and 70 loads per day, which meant between 40 and 70 sets of strangers' lives passing through her hands. The food stains, the sweat marks, the perfume traces, the specific residue of other people's days absorbed into fabric and surrendered to her machines. She didn't read the card, not at first. She found it in the pocket during the pre-wash check, the mandatory inspection where you emptied pockets before loading, because hotel guests left everything: wallets, keys, pens, receipts, rings, and once a man's divorce papers, folded into a breast pocket so tightly they came out compressed like origami. The card went into the returns basket, standard procedure. Found items were logged, bagged, and returned to the guest's room by housekeeping. The second card appeared the following week. Same pocket, same trousers, same words. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I don't know how to say it out loud." Ruth held it longer this time. She read it, properly, not the glance of a laundry worker checking for a name or room number, but the reading of a person who understood that the same message in the same pocket for the second time was not forgetfulness. It was ritual. The man in room 812 was writing an apology he couldn't deliver. He was writing it, putting it in his pocket, and sending it to the laundry. Not to be washed, to be found. Or perhaps not even that. Perhaps the writing was the point. The pocket was the confessional. The card was the prayer. She returned the second card. The third card. Same words, same pocket, same Tuesday. She returned it. The fourth, the fifth, the sixth. 6 weeks, 6 cards. The same 12 words. She had memorized them by the 3rd week, not intentionally, the way you memorize a song that plays in the elevator every morning. The words lived in her now. She had not told anyone. The laundry department had 3 other workers, Joy, Blessing, and Michael, and none of them would have cared about a card in a pocket. They processed fabric. They didn't process meaning. Ruth processed both. She was 22, and she had been processing meaning since before her hands were large enough to fold a towel. She was the eldest of 5. Her father had left when she was 11. Not dramatically, not violently, just gone one Tuesday and never anything on Wednesday. He had driven a lorry. He had driven it away, and the family had reorganized itself around his absence, the way water reorganizes around a stone that's been removed, by filling the space. Ruth had filled it. She had become the second parent, the one who ironed school uniforms and checked homework and negotiated with the landlord when rent was late, and held her mother during the evenings when the absence settled like dust on surfaces that hadn't been wiped. Her mother worked at a market. Ruth worked at the hotel. Between them, they covered the 5 children, the rent, the school fees, and the specific mathematics of a family that had lost one earner and compensated by everyone performing at 200%. She was tired the way structural beams are tired, not from a specific load, but from the sustained weight of holding things up. She processed laundry. She processed her family. She processed the quiet, accumulating exhaustion of a young woman who had been carrying since 11 and didn't know how to set anything down. The cards were the first thing in 3 years that had made her pause. Not because the words were beautiful. They weren't. They were plain. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I don't know how to say it out loud." The words of a person who had run out of language and was circling the same 12 words the way a man circles a door he can't open. Because she recognized it. The apology that couldn't land. The words written because they couldn't be spoken. The practice run for a conversation that might never happen. Her father had never said those 12 words. Not to her, not to her mother, not to anyone. He had driven away and left behind a family of 6 who were still, 11 years later, waiting for a sentence they would probably never hear. "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I don't know how to say it out loud." She held the 6th card, and she understood, with the specific clarity of someone who had grown up without an apology, that the man in room 812 was failing to give someone the thing her own father had failed to give her. The 7th week, Tuesday. Washing cycle 4, room 812. She emptied the pockets. Left front, nothing. Right front, room key. Left back, nothing. Right back, nothing. The card wasn't there. She checked again. She turned the trousers inside out. She checked the shirt, the socks, the entire bundle. Nothing. No card. She stood in the industrial hum of the laundry room, holding khaki trousers that didn't have a card in them, and felt something shift, the specific drop of a routine disrupted. For 6 weeks the card had been there. It had been as reliable as the spin cycle, as the dryer timer, as the folding table. Now it was gone. She finished the load. She folded the clothes. She placed them in the delivery basket for housekeeping. She clocked out at 4 p.m. She did not go home. Instead, she walked to the hotel restaurant on the ground floor, the beige, adequate space where business guests ate alone and read phones and existed in the specific solitude of people who were away from the lives they'd rather be in. He was sitting at a corner table. She recognized him from the laundry, not his face, which she'd never seen, but his clothes. The same khaki trousers, now clean, the same white shirt. The single wardrobe. He was sitting alone. There was a plate in front of him, mostly untouched. A glass of water. No phone. He was in his mid-50s, Nigerian, dark skin, thin, not lean, thin. The thinness of someone who wasn't eating enough, the body consuming itself in the absence of whatever fuel it had been running on. His hands were on the table, flat, palms down. The posture of a man pressing something into a surface so it doesn't fly away. But his face was the 7th card. The one he hadn't written. The expression of a man who has been rehearsing an apology for 6 weeks and has run out of rehearsals and is sitting alone in a hotel restaurant looking like he has finally given up. Ruth stood at the entrance and watched him. She was a laundry worker in a beige hotel uniform. She had no reason to be in the restaurant. She had no connection to this man beyond 12 words in a trouser pocket. She walked to his table. He looked up. The look was defensive first, the automatic assessment of a person interrupting a private collapse. Then, confused, he didn't recognize her. "I work in the laundry," she said. He waited. "I've been finding your cards," she said, "for 6 weeks. Same pocket, same words." Something crossed his face. Not shock, resignation. The expression of a man who understands that a secret he thought was invisible was being read by someone he'd never considered. "Today there was no card," she said. He looked at the table, at his untouched plate, at his hands flat and pressing. "No," he said. "Today I gave up." She pulled out the chair across from him. She sat down. She didn't ask permission, the same way she didn't ask permission to fold towels or iron sheets. She sat because sitting was the thing that needed to happen, and she was the person there to do it. "Who are you apologizing to?" she asked. He was quiet for a long time. The restaurant moved around them, waiters, guests, the ambient noise of a place designed for temporary people. "My daughter," he said. His name was Gabriel Nwankwo. He was 54. He had been an accountant, a good one, meticulous, the kind of man whose desk was always organized and whose files were always current. He had been married for 22 years. He had one daughter, Chidera, who was now 28. When Chidera was 16, she had told him she wanted to study music, not as a hobby, as a career, performance, piano. The kind of career that required years of training and offered no guarantee or salary or pension. Gabriel was an accountant. He believed in systems, in projections, in the mathematical probability of outcomes. He looked at music the way he looked at a balance sheet that didn't add up, with professional concern and the certainty that somebody needed to correct the error before it became a loss. He told his daughter no. Not gently, not with the diplomacy of a father who disagrees but respects. He told her with the absolute authority of a man who controlled the education budget and believed that the best use of that budget was a practical degree that led to a practical job that led to a practical life. He told her she was wasting her talent, that music was not a career, that he was protecting her from a future of failure. She applied to a music conservatory anyway. She was accepted. She asked her father to pay the fees. He refused. She went anyway, on a partial scholarship and the money her mother had secretly saved. He found out. The argument that followed was the kind of argument that doesn't end when people stop speaking. It was the kind that ends marriages and divides families and creates silences so complete that they have their own architecture. His wife left first, not because of the argument, because of what the argument revealed. A man who would rather be right than be father. She took nothing except their daughter and a clarity about what she needed, which was to not be married to a man whose control was indistinguishable from love. Chidera didn't leave. She was already gone. She had been gone the moment he said no in the way that meant, "I don't see you." That was 12 years ago. 12 years of letters written and not sent. Phone numbers dialed and not connected. Addresses found and not visited. 12 years of a man who had been right about the math and wrong about everything else, sitting in the accountancy of his own failure, auditing a loss he couldn't write off. He had found out, through mutual acquaintances, through social media he observed but never interacted with, that Chidera had graduated, that she was performing, that she had built without his money and without his approval, exactly the career he had told her was impossible. She was playing at a concert hall in Abuja this week, tomorrow night. A recital, solo piano. The event listing showed her photograph. Chidera Nwankwo, elegant, composed, seated at a piano that he had never heard her play. He had come to Abuja with one set of clothes and an apology he could not fix into spoken language. He had been writing it on cards, practicing the way she had practiced scales, repetition as preparation, and putting the cards in his pocket, carrying the words against his body, hoping that proximity would teach him how to say them out loud. 6 weeks. 6 cards. 12 words. And today, the day before the concert, he had given up. Not the apology, the belief that he deserved to deliver it. "I don't have the right," he said. His hands were still flat on the table. "I told her she was wrong. She wasn't. I told her she would fail. She didn't. I chose to be correct over being kind. And now 12 years have passed, and she built everything I said she couldn't build, and I am sitting in a hotel restaurant alone because I don't have the right to walk into the concert of a daughter I tried to stop." Ruth listened. She listened the way she processed laundry, completely, without shortcuts, the full cycle. "The card said 12 words," she said. "You've been writing them for 6 weeks." "Yes." "You memorized them. They're inside you." "They're inside me. They won't come out." She looked at his hands, at the flat, pressing palms, at the posture of a man who had organized his entire life by numbers and couldn't calculate the cost of showing up at a concert hall. "My father left when I was 11, she said. "He drove a lorry, and one day he drove away, and he never came back. He never said those 12 words to me, not once, not in 11 years of silence." She paused. "If he walked into a room tomorrow and said them, any version of them, I would listen. I'm 22 years old, and I would give a stranger the chair across from me if he came with those words. Your daughter will give you more than a chair. You don't know that. I know what it feels like to wait for someone to say it, and I know what it feels like when they don't." She pushed his plate toward him. "Eat, sleep, go to the concert. You don't need a card. You need a seat." He looked at the plate, at the food he hadn't touched, at the woman who processed his laundry and was now processing his failure with the same competence and the same absence of judgment. He picked up the fork. He ate. She was off shift the next evening. She put on her own clothes, a dress she kept in her locker for occasions that never materialized, blue, the nicest thing she owned. She took a bus to the concert hall. She bought the cheapest ticket, the last row, the seat behind a column, the seat that existed because buildings had columns and someone had to sit behind them. She was there for the same reason she had sat down at his table. Because the thing that needed to happen required a witness, and she was the person who was there. The hall was filling. She watched the audience, business people, diplomats, music students, the specific Abuja mix of power and culture that attended events like this because attending was a practice and a signal. She didn't see Gabriel. The lights dimmed. The stage was set, a grand piano, black, gleaming, the instrument enormous under the stage lighting. A single spotlight. Chidera walked out. She was 28, tall, composed. She wore a dark gown, and she walked to the piano with the specific stride of someone who has earned the right to be on a stage by the accumulation of 10,000 hours of practice and 12 years of proving someone wrong. She sat. She adjusted the bench. She placed her hands on the keys. She played. Ruth didn't know classical music. She knew hotel operations, laundry temperatures, fabric care instructions, and the specific mathematics of a family of 6 surviving on 2 incomes. She didn't know Chopin or Debussy or whatever the program said. But she knew what skill sounded like. The way she knew what a perfectly folded sheet looked like, or what properly pressed trousers felt like under her hands. Precision. Economy. The complete absence of waste. Every note was placed with the same deliberation Ruth used to organize a 100-load day. Nothing extra, nothing missing. Every element where it needed to be. Chidera played for 40 minutes. The hall was silent except for the piano and the breathing of people who had forgotten they could breathe louder. During the 4th piece, something slow, something that moved through the room the way warm water moves through cold. Ruth heard it. A sound, behind her, not from the music, from a person. She turned. Gabriel was there. He was standing at the back of the hall. He hadn't sat down. He was holding a ticket, crumpled, gripped in both hands. His expression was worse than the restaurant. The restaurant had been defeat. This was something larger. The specific combination of pride and grief and shame that occurs when a man sees the physical, audible proof that the person he tried to stop didn't need his permission. His daughter was on stage. Playing the piano he'd refused to pay for. In the career he'd said didn't exist. In the concert hall he'd almost not entered. He was crying. Not dramatically. Not with sound. The tears ran from his eyes into the deep lines of his face, and he did nothing to stop them. His hands, both of them, were holding the crumpled ticket, and his body was doing the thing bodies do when they surrender. Shaking. Slightly. The tremor of a structure releasing the weight it has been carrying. Ruth stood up. She walked to the back. She stood beside him. She didn't touch him. She didn't speak. She stood there. The music continued. Chidera played. Her father listened from the last row, behind a column, in the concert hall of the career he'd tried to kill. When the piece ended, the applause began. The hall filled with the specific sound of recognition. Not polite clapping, the kind that comes from people who have heard something extraordinary and are trying to say so with their hands. Chidera stood. She bowed. The spotlight caught her face, confident, earned. The face of a woman who had done the thing she was told she couldn't do. Ruth looked at Gabriel. His hands were no longer pressing flat. They were no longer writing cards. They were no longer holding crumpled tickets. They were clapping. Slowly, then harder. The applause of a man who has been wrong for 12 years and is now, finally, telling his daughter she was right. Not with words, because words had failed him for 6 weeks and 12 years, but with his hands, from the last row, behind a column, in a hall where the sound of one father clapping couldn't possibly be distinguished from the sound of everyone else. But it was. Ruth didn't see what happened after the concert. She left during the standing ovation, slipped out through the side entrance, caught the bus, went home. She folded the blue dress and put it back in the locker the next morning, and processed cycle 4 the way she always did. Room 812's laundry came in on Tuesday. The same khaki trousers, the same white shirt. She checked the pockets. Right back pocket, a card. Small, white, hotel stationery. Different handwriting. Not his. Rounder, more confident. The handwriting of a person who had never had trouble saying what she meant. He found me after the concert. He couldn't speak. He just stood there. I played the last piece again, just for him, in the empty hall, with the lights off. He sat in the front row. He cried through the whole thing. We haven't talked about the 12 years yet. We don't need to. He was there. That was enough. For now. And below, in his handwriting, the same careful hand that had written 12 words for 6 weeks. Thank you, from the last row. Ruth held the card. She held it for a long time. Then she placed it, not in the returns basket, in her pocket. The right back pocket of her uniform trousers. She carried it, the way he had carried his, against her body, close. She went back to work. Cycle 5, 40 loads. The machines turning, the laundry processing. The small white card in her pocket pressing against her like a heartbeat she'd needed to feel. Thanks for watching. If you've been carrying 12 words and can't say them out loud, write them down. Put them in your pocket. Someone will find them. Tell us where you're watching from.